Welcome back to Noise Avocation Podcast, the weekly show on all things music related. I'm Ryan, here with Jeremy as always.
What's good?
What are we, an episode ahead here? Yeah, so hopefully by the time this comes out, hopefully everybody enjoyed the Majesty's interview that we did with Tanner and Carl. I thought it was a lot of fun and very technical.
Very informative. Learned a lot.
Yeah. I even got lost in a couple spots.
I also needed a flashlight.
Yeah, but it was good. Like,
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I liked seeing that much into their creative process, so it was cool to let them take over the show and get all the inside details that we had. But anyway, today's a new day. So today we have, before I jump into that, social media stuff, you can find us at Noise Avocation Podcast on Facebook, Noise Avocation on Instagram and YouTube. Email us at noiseavocation@gmail.com. My personal Instagram is at SoundwaveSlave, and Jeremy
is holdfast_517 at Instagram. Spell it out. Say it every time.
They'll get it eventually.
I hope so.
Everything,
somebody hit me up.
Everything's on hyperlinks in the episode descriptions. So all you lazy people that don't want to type this shit, you can just go click it and it'll take you right to it. But today we have Dan with us from Coalition. This has been a band from Detroit that was around from 2000 to 2004 and has been split up for a while now. But if you're Instagram savvy and have been checking out anything related to them, you've seen Dan posting a bunch of old Coalition stuff as far as people's collections of merch that they've had, 7-inches, 7-inch variants, CDs, show stories, talking about shows in basements and just places that they've seen them and whatnot.
A lot of great photos.
Yeah, and Dan's been very active at posting quite a few photos every single day. It seems like almost every time I open up my phone, my algorithm throws me a Coalition picture.
Yeah, me too.
And which is cool because I like seeing all the photos, and leading into the episode, it was cool to see all that stuff popping up and everybody talking about their memories of the shows and when they seen them, where they seen them, how it affected their life, what they've collected, and whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
But before we get into the interview here, for anybody who's unfamiliar, we're going to play a track from their album Breaking Point, which
happens to be my personal favorite.
The track is called You'll Never Know. This album has been out for 20 years this year and will have its 20th anniversary in June. And it's, up until recently, been kind of hard to stream anywhere if you didn't have physical copies or a dubbed version or MP3s or something, it was hard to find. So it's cool to see that this stuff's getting out there more. But anyways, this is You'll Never Know off the album Breaking Point by Coalition.
You think your heart will fall on change, but what you want is what you get. Think it's what you before. You're looking for sanity, then the fucking die. Try to believe it, to admit, sleeping in, to know what it means, be a part of the day. You gotta fucking get what you know. Pick a shit, you go wrong. You're alive, you're dead. You're fucking to die. You make me sick. I just love your life, you might think. That little bit of blood, what you think. You know now, anything you say. You're gonna have to give all you do right. I think that you get full of shit.
All right, we have Dan from Coalition here with us. Dan, thank you for jumping on the show and taking the time to do so.
Well, thank you guys so much. It is really an honor to be invited to talk about a band that meant so much to me. So I can't wait to hear what you guys have for me.
Oh, yeah, we always have a whole bunch of little things for everybody we interview. We put some time into everything, so.
I have like some funny personal things that I remember from when you
Nice.
guys played that is, I'll bring up later.
I was hoping you'd say that because coming to Alpena was such a shock for us in the best possible sense.
Oh,
So
like you
anyways,
thought there
we'll
was
talk
gonna
about
be
that
like-
later. I can't wait to hear what you say.
Okay. Oh, speaking of which, I just want to say shout out to Jason Zolakowski, OG Ogre, who used to put those shows on.
Jason, thank
Yeah.
you. I remember, I hope I'm remembering right. I let him I didn't tell him it was the one I was going to keep, but my Judge ripoff shirt that I was going to keep for myself. But he was so cool and booking our shows. I was like, no, this is for you.
Oh, I wonder, I'm sure he has it.
Oh, sweet. If you do, Jason, please send me a picture of it. I'm trying to just document everything.
Yeah, I saw that
thoroughly as
Judge
possible.
ripoff shirt the other day. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that because my our friend Cole had one of those shirts. And I
No way.
I
Sweet.
remember that to this day, If he still
Cool.
has it, I doubt it.
Yeah, for sure.
He might, I
Yeah,
don't
somebody's
know.
got to have it somewhere, and just getting a couple pictures that will just make me super happy.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about how the band formed.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I was like Burn of the Century, right? That sounds so epic. But yeah, Y2K. There was a band called Varsity. I don't know if you guys remember Varsity.
Okay,
They
I
were
remember
playing around
Varsity.
Detroit in the Midwest. They did a West Coast shuffle there at the end. They put out a 7-inch and a split 12-inch with Blood Pact on Plus Minus Records. And they were part of the tail end of what we like to call the youth crew revival, or the second wave of youth crew that was happening in the mid to late 90s.
Right.
But they were like here in Detroit, and they were the only band like it. And even though like as I was getting into hardcore, Earth Mover kind of reigned in Detroit, and obviously Cold as Life as well was getting ready to finally drop their full length, Varsity was out there, playing this like positive, youthful, fast hardcore. And that was the stuff that really spoke to me. I love the heavy stuff. I love Hatebreed. I love Cold as Life. I love the mosh and the anger, but the positive stuff was just, it hit differently for me. So anyways, I loved Varsity, and they were wrapping up their band, and I was in a band called Resound.
That's
And
okay.
we had a demo, and it was never officially released. Okay. So this demo, I have it. It's 4 songs. It had the guy, his name's Frank. He played drums in Coalition.
Okay.
And it had Wedge from For Dire Life's Sake. I'm sure you guys have heard of For Dire Life's Sake.
Yep.
He played guitar, and we actually went to high school together, Wedge and I, and my first 3 bands of my life were with him. So it's a pretty cool story, but I won't get too much into that. But anyways, we were in a band with called Resound, and it was sort of like, I would say Bane or As Friends Rust.
Okay.
Kind of like a mix in between there. So it was a little bit melodic, but it was fast. And we broke up too, just, the guys in Toledo. It was just too much, So it just all happened at the same time that Varsity broke up, Resound broke up. And it was me and Frank. I had a drummer who was brilliant. And Alex from Varsity, he already had a bunch of songs written, was looking for some help. And he was best friends with Brent. I think he played in Varsity sometimes, but he was more known for being in Tryphon, being one of the 2 or 3 singers, depending on the era of Tryphon. And we got together for a practice in.
Dude, I've been saying that.
Frank's.
I've been saying Tryphene for fucking. How do you say it? I've been saying it wrong for like 30 years. No, not that long. 20 years.
No
Shit.
problem.
Damn, that's hilarious.
It's a weird word. It's not the type of word that comes up in daily conversation. So completely understandable. So I just happened to grow up around those guys.
I just remember a kid. He made a bootleg T-shirt
Nice.
around here when we were kids, and like.
Was it X Tryphon X? I hope it was.
Yeah, it was. But it was
Nice.
like so. I don't know. It was funny. It was like some fucking Joanne Fabric shit, but.
Oh, cool.
But he still
Dude,
he said Tryphene, man. So he's been saying it
All
wrong
right.
too. I'm gonna have to correct people
If I'm wrong, eggs on my face, but that's okay. Like,
because
I'm
I didn't
gonna
know
go
you
with-
were
I'm gonna
talking
go with
about
Tryphon.
until you were like 3 singers, and I'm like, oh.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, we got together for a practice. I don't think we went in with any expectations of, we wanted, we all obviously got together with the intention of starting a new project. but I don't think we knew that it would be such an important project, you know, in our lives, that it would last as long as it did, and that we'd produce as many songs and records and tour as much as we did. So we just ended up in this basement in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And Alex brought the songs, you know, and by the end of it, we had 2 songs that sounded pretty tight. I was like, wow, like it was almost like we were meant to
Like in a
meant to
night?
play together, you know? It was really cool. We were just a 4-piece at the time. It was just, you know, we didn't have a second guitar player, but it went so smooth, I remember. It was really exciting. You know, for me, because I loved Varsity, and Brent being in Tryphon, you know, like they had some epic like live shows. So it was just kind of like, and I knew those guys. I had gone to like Edge Day in Boston with them. So like we were friends, but we weren't like bandmates, you know.
Gotcha.
This was a new level of friendship that was beginning. So yeah, that's kind of how it started, was just our 2 bands breaking up and kind of like reforming at the end of the year 2000. And, you know, from there on, it was just like full speed ahead.
Well, you kind of answered my next question about expectations for Coalition. I mean, did you guys think, you know, we're going to put out a 7-inch and see how it goes, or were you guys like, we're going to take this as far as we can? Or, you know, what was your mindset?
Yeah, what I do remember is that we were, I don't know if surprised is the right word, but we were very happy with the early songs. Like they sounded mature. And we felt like we had been playing together longer than we had. So we decided that we were, when it comes to our first release, we were going to do a demo, but we weren't going to just do a demo at the same time. We were going to really put our money together and go to a good studio, and we were going to like make it awesome, because we thought that if we put out a really strong first release, it would be picked up by a label.
Right.
And that's what we did. We pooled our money and we wrote about 7 songs between late August and December, and went into the studio in January of 2001 with 7 new songs in Woodshed Studios in Ferndale, Michigan, which was kind of a known punk studio.
Right.
I don't want to say it was pricey, but it was a little bit more than maybe going to see like Mike Hasty at Cloud City. Yeah. Right. Like a little bit like I've recorded with Mike Hasty like 3 times, and it was always fun, but it was more of a pro feeling studio. Right. So we were all in at that point. Like we were putting our money where our hearts were at that point, because we were just young college kids. We were like 20, you know, 19.
Okay, yeah,
like
so you're answering them all.
Yeah. So we were in college, and just actually Frank was in high school. Frank, the drummer, man, he was young. That dude was freaking amazing at drums. Like he'd been playing in ska bands since he was like 14, but he was crazy. He was almost like an artist in the true sense of the word with those drum skins and those sticks. But anyways, yeah, he was in high school at the time, and the rest of us were in college.
So like back then, I thought you guys were like 10 years older than me, you know, but come to find out, like I'm 38. So you're only like what, 3, 4, 5 years older than me?
Yeah. Like I know Alex and I are the same age. We're 42, and Brent's 1 year older, and Frank was the one who was younger though. He's probably like your age. He's probably like 38. But yeah, we were in the age range, but we were a little bit older. I mean, back, you know, when you're a teenager, 5 years plus.
Oh, it's huge.
That feels like a lot. It feels huge. I remember seeing Cold as Life play, and they were probably in their late 20s in the 90s, but they felt so much older and mature than I did, you know? So yeah, it makes sense that it would, like, the perception would be, wow, these dudes are like really like older, and like, you know, I've seen a lot more than I have.
Yeah, dude. And your sound at that time, it stood out in Detroit because at first to me it didn't really have a lot of that metallic sound yet that, you know, is notorious in Detroit.
Yeah.
I felt that kind of stood out. Like you said, you wanted a youth crew positive message type of thing, and Detroit's not really known for that, you know what I mean?
It's not.
It was more Revelation style than it was Detroit stuff.
It was, and that was our goal all along. Like, I just look at the shirts we wore in the pictures. That's kind of indicative of like who we were trying to emulate, you know. Like our definitely. Big influences were obviously like early rev bands. I would say live wise, we would say we always wanted to be like Chain to Strength, you know, like we want to be like jumping around and having fun. But there was also the part of the band, and I think this comes across too, you know, reading some old reviews, is that we were pretty tight, and the musicianship was there. It wasn't just like simple things. So we were kind of this amalgamation of youthful energy, but also like tasteful, musical composition. I don't know. That kind of sounds nerdy, but
Oh no,
hopefully
it
that kind of
it
gets
like it
at like
totally stood out.
what we were thinking.
Totally
Yeah,
stood
so
out.
like in the beginning, we were definitely like I think we were influenced by obviously like the start of the band was the energy of early Rev, but when listening to it, it is New Age Records, early '90s, 1134, Collateral Damage, Late Turning Point, and especially Outspoken. And
Oh
I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really hear that now, like looking back 20 plus years later, like I'm like, okay, I really hear those influences more than I did even at the time. So, yeah, so we were kind of like youth crew energy, but we had this like more like '90s, like kind of early '90s, kind of sound, even unbroken-ish. Like we're not like metal in the sense of like new, like not new metal, but like
God no.
current, what we call like metallic hardcore. But like Unbroken had this metallic edge, and you hear that like songs like Pusher, which is the fourth song on the demo, which we haven't got to yet, but that would become the Smorgasbord CD
Okay.
EP. That song definitely has like a metallic groove, but it doesn't sound metal. You know what I mean? But it sounds like Unbroken and Outspoken and things like that. Because hardcore was progressing weird in the early '90s, and we were kind of taking that, but we wanted it to be fast.
Right.
So whatever we were doing, there was something fast around it, which that's my thing, and that's why I was so happy to be in Coalition.
Yeah, I always thought like that first Fault the Breaking Point sounds like a lot like Warzone almost, where it's heavy, but it's not metal. And you have those fast
Yeah.
chuggy parts, and then like my favorite song is You'll Never Know on that record, and there's that crazy
Mm-hmm.
guitar solo at the end
Oh yeah.
that it
Yep.
totally sounds like some shit off of like Don't Forget the Struggle. And
That's
I
cool.
always thought that was badass.
Awesome.
So I mean,
Appreciate that.
Warzone would be a safe assumption on an influence. Warzone,
Oh yeah.
Bold, all that kind of shit, like you were saying.
Yeah, the core members that were there from start to finish were Alex, myself, and Brent, and we all, I know for sure, are all like 100% like Warzone
Hell yeah.
fanboys for sure. Yeah, like even up through the Victory years, like I just always love them.
No, me
Even
too.
the Bullet Hole record, I'll revisit once in a while, and I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I'm gonna see the good in this, and you groove to it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, they're awesome. Yeah. So that's a compliment, a
Yeah,
huge
that I
compliment.
definitely that's what I heard in that song especially. But
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Breaking Point just had its 20th anniversary not that long ago.
In June, it was released, I think June 3rd, so it's going to
So
have
it's
its
coming
20
up.
year. But
Gotcha.
we actually we recorded it in late 2002 at Mars Recording Compound in Cleveland, which is where Integrity recorded almost all their hits. It's where Earth Crisis recorded Firestorm. And 2 weeks before we went to record Breaking Point, guess who was there?
I haven't the slightest.
Terror recording Lowest of the Low.
Oh my
Oh,
God,
wow.
that fucking album is so
I
classic now.
It's one of my favorites of all time. And we have
Agreed.
like guys who are doing like backup vocals that did it for Terror and then for us because it was at the same studio. It was like some local guys from Detroit, but also some local like Cleveland guys
That's sick.
came out to do. Yeah. And so I remember just like there was like little clips of like Terror that Bill Korecki, the engineer, was like recording me over like Scott Vogel. I was like, no, don't do that. And it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
they had their tapes and everything. But there
That's
was like some
cool.
pieces where I'm hearing Terror because that was like literally like might have been the last project he'd worked on before we came in to do Breaking Point. So that just kind of gives you a sketch of the time we were in,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it was Terror, man. Like they were just about to like pop off. Like their demo was already like, spread everywhere. But those 9 songs are special to me to this day. And it's just kind of
I
the cool
agree with you,
thing
man.
that we're guilty by association. We were in the studio, like we had nothing to do with that. And, we weren't, but it's still kind of cool that
I
Yeah, no,
like
our
it's
this.
paths
definitely a cool
crossed.
detail into the album for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would
So
put
that
I would also I'd put
cool.
Lowest of the Low like for me on like a top 10 list of like classic hardcore records for sure, like in my life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I still listen to
Yeah,
that
me
like
too.
pretty often. You might hear me say that a few times,
Get pumped
but when I
up.
say it, I'm telling you it's true. Like Lowest of the Low, yeah, I'll be in the gym and I'll be like, all right, I just got to hear
Yeah.
the song Lowest of the Low. That breakdown's sick. So yeah,
Yeah, hardcore is some
love
of the
that
best
record.
workout music there is, I've found.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was
So,
listening to Momentum the other day on Days Records, and that's a good workout. record as well. So yeah,
I was listening
So
to the
good.
new Illmatic quite a bit when it came out.
Oh yeah,
That was another good workout thing. We interviewed them a while back, and
I
I think
I
Joe
heard that
said
interview,
Joe said that
and I was
he got a
inspired,
lot
and I've
of
been listening to them
yeah, they're a great band. I really like their blend of music. How's it
to like
feel
kind of
knowing
bring up that
that
memory.
Breaking Point's 20 years old already?
Oh man, I don't know. Like it's not. It's surreal that that much time has gone by, because the way I look at it is, in 2003, what was 20 years previous, and that was 1983, and it's like, wow, it's like Minor Threat was,
Mm-hmm.
together. Like it just kind of puts things in perspective that there's been a lot of life lived since then, and just as far as hardcore goes, there's been a lot of hardcore that's transpired since then. A lot of changes for the good, because it's easy to look back and say, I wish hardcore was like it was in 2003, but like that's a lot of time, and that's a lot of opportunity for creativity to just like spawn new and interesting things, which it has. So it's crazy to think it's been that long. I don't feel that old.
No, hell no.
but it has. But 20 years is significant. I'm proud of it. To be honest, like wow, 20 years ago we were able to put together songs and rehearse them and play them, and not just record these albums, but play like almost every weekend. We were prolific and are playing locally, and we did tours, and we hung out with some pretty good bands back then.
I've seen you guys in Detroit at least once that I can remember. I think it was for a Most Precious Blood Promise show. I think you guys opened up for that.
Was that the Shelter?
Yeah, yep. I remember
Cool. Yeah,
seeing
that
you
was a good
there,
show.
and then and then a couple times up here, and that was in the 2003, 2004 era. So I mean, I can vouch for you that you guys were like hardworking as fuck.
Yeah, we loved it. That's what it was. Like we loved being together. Like we were like as a band, like we just enjoyed being around one another, which makes it really easy. And then the songs just flowed, and we had like the same mindset. Like let's write songs, let's put out as many records as we can, let's play as many shows. Like we were all single, and we all had the opportunity in life, which as we've all grown older, we've recognized that you only have that ability one time. For most people, at least, you only get that freedom, and I certainly couldn't ever do that again. And that's why, like a wise friend said to me recently, hardcore is a young man's game. And what he meant by this, not that young people are the only ones who can like make hardcore or listen to hardcore, but they're the only ones who can invest in it in that way, right? With time and with going everywhere. So I am so thankful that we made the most of those years. I will say we were hardworking, and we did everything we could to have fun and play shows and be with each other, but also to let the music be heard, by anybody who had a willing ear. So it's great. So 20 years, wow. Like, it's kind of, it's significant, but I'm very, very pleased and proud of what we did in that time.
And you should be, man. It's an amazing fucking record.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Do you happen to have any plans to press up new physical copies of the album for the anniversary, or just kind of, I noticed it's on streaming services now, and it wasn't for quite a while?
Sure. No, that's a great question. We've had some talks. There's some interest. Okay. I don't know how serious the interest is, so I can't commit to say that. But personally, I would do anything to see that at least Breaking Point and maybe The Sight and the Sound are pressed, as an LP, even if it's just a short press. Just nobody, enough time has gone by, and it's been enough years where it wasn't streaming, and Sight and the Sound is still not streaming.
Yeah,
I had to buy it off Bandcamp this morning. Which is because I didn't have it.
Well, I appreciate that. And as far as like Bandcamp, like charging for that's just to help us like get a couple bucks
for sure, man.
To like get stuff streaming, and Alex is actually working on the streaming. I'm working on the Bandcamp, because the Bandcamp's a little bit more simple, right? You don't have to go through like a third party, organization. So it's a lot easier to just like kind of throw things up there. So it's just kind of like a way, it's almost like a GoFundMe for getting everything up on Spotify.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I would nothing would make me more happy than to see those in a 12-inch format.
Yeah, like a limited
It's
run.
just a weird time. It was a CD. It was a time where the CD dominated.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I
It
mean?
was hard to sell a
And
record in 2000, 2003, any
it,
time in that
unless you
era.
got like the first one, like whatever the limited color
Yeah.
was that was limited to 100 or 200. Yeah, you weren't going to sell. And pressing back then, you'd press 1,000. You wouldn't have these short presses like you do now.
Right.
It would be like 500, 1,000. It was a lot, So yeah, like we were on Fight Fire with Fire Records for Breaking Point, and Porcell was running that record label, and it was cool because it was one step away from Revelation. Like we were
Yeah.
like, we didn't have a star, but it kind of felt like we did in a way because it was exclusively distributed, like old Ambassador Records was in the 90s. They actually put a star, like I know it wasn't truly a star, but kind of felt, you felt like you're a part of Revelation in some way. Like
You're
even
making
like
a record
like
with Purcell. That's fucking awesome, dude. Like
it was
same
it was,
guy that
dude,
made a
it was an
record with
honor.
Youth of Today and Judge and like all these great fucking
Project
oh my
X,
God.
Shelter,
Yeah, Project X.
Man, Schism Records,
oh my God.
Think of it, Schism was his first label, So that was such a big honor to be recognized and to be invited to be part of that family. And a cool story, just in case it doesn't come up again while we're talking about Porcell, he came out to a show we played in Rochester, New York with Desperate Measures and One Up. And it was in this like sketchy neighborhood in a warehouse right after an ice storm.
Perfect.
An ice storm that knocked out the power of the area, where a lot of people didn't show up to the show. So I wasn't even sure Porcell was going to be there, but he showed up, and when we were able to get power, I don't know if it was on generators, I'm not sure, but Desperate Measure showed up, and we all played, and we had a fun time. And we played the song Fed Up by Judge as a cover song. And I handed the mic to Porcell, and he sang it.
Oh,
and I sang along to my own band, and it was super surreal. And I have a picture of it, of me singing along to my own band with Porcell on vocals. And I'm going to post that, on the Instagram one of these days. But, just dope. Like cool memories like that. Like it was a very special time. And like I said, I'm very proud to have been a part of hardcore in general, but of Coalition and Detroit hardcore, in particular at the time. So
yeah, dude, it's like the most important time in my life, I would say, and obviously built us as individuals to who we are today. So you have to take those
absolutely
as precious and cherish those memories.
100%.
Here's a personal story of me seeing you guys. It was the first time I got tattooed. And I remember the date because it was 1 month exactly after my birthday. So you played in a day. You played March 8th, 2003, and you played You'll Never Know. And I remember you just looking so pissed, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. And then somebody, I think it was either Alex or Brent, sold me a Shutdown 12-inch album Against All Odds for $2. And that's kind of what started my vinyl thing, collecting. You know what I mean? It started at that point, which is kind of cool. And Shutdown, the reason I bought it is Shutdown was probably the second band that I got into. So your style fit right in there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Which is to what drew
I do.
me. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
That's awesome.
That's the only.
I don't know who it was, but for some reason, I'm guessing it was Brent. Brent. He's the one who had the solid record collection. I could see him bringing up a couple of records, almost distroing in a way. But
yeah, it was
really cool.
It was awesome.
Another
thing I wanted to ask you
too.
Oh, I know, right?
So cool.
Do you think that, in my opinion, I think that punk rock and hardcore in the 90s and even into the early 2000s kind of kept vinyl going until this whole revival thing happened? Would you agree? Because that's where I always saw vinyl.
I totally agree.
In the punk rock hardcore vein of things.
7 inches especially.
Yeah, kept that shit alive. And now look.
Yeah, I don't know 100%, but I have 100% felt that way.
Right, right.
I agree. When I think back, vinyl was such an important part of punk and hardcore. You couldn't imagine it without. Even though our full lengths were released on CD only, guess what? The bigger labels were still putting out vinyl, and people were still excited about vinyl. And I don't know if you guys remember this at all, but this is anecdotal, and maybe I'm off, and maybe there was other eras where this like reigned. But I feel like the time where Coalition was around was the time of like special covers of vinyl. So it wasn't even like colored vinyl. It was like special like hand printed or like printed cover. It could be like the screen printed cover.
Oh, like
or
you
like,
guys did
you know,
with
like,
that last fucking 7-inch where you had like the limited tour covers.
there was like 12 of them. We did that like as a joke because of the era. We were kind of poking fun at ourselves,
well,
right? Because that was what was going on. So yeah, 100%. We like gave a cover to like everybody in the band, and we were making like silly faces on them, and it was kind of like in jest, but at the same time, it was fun, and we were making fun of ourselves. It wasn't like we were saying vinyls, you know, these covers are stupid. We were just being kind of silly. And yeah, we even did that for our split 7-inch with Holding On. We made a Macho Man cover where we were all like, each one of us was decorated as like one of the village people. I think I was the cop. So,
awesome.
You know, like it was just like that time. You just couldn't imagine like going on tour, you know, without anything on vinyl, right? So even though we had like CDs, it was like we have to have vinyl because there was still that very important segment that would purchase vinyl and cherish vinyl. And vinyl that feels more like a trophy, you know, than any other musical format, physical format. You know, cassettes are cool, CDs are cool, they get the job done, you hear the music, but vinyl's an experience, you know, like it's different. It's holding it in your hand just feels like it's like an accomplishment of the band and
you're
press
preaching to the
implant of the
choir,
label.
brother.
Yeah, it just feels a little bit more. I don't know. It just hits differently. You know what I mean?
Jason
so yeah,
Zolotowski always had the baddest record collection, and that's how we heard a lot of shit in his apartment because he's like, he's the only one that had a job back then. We were all a bunch of fucking little rascals, I suppose, running around.
Nice.
But
that actually brings up a good point that I didn't bring up is vinyl used to be cheap, right?
Yep.
So it used to be cheaper to press vinyl than a CD. So if you were a punk band and you didn't have a lot of money and you were very DIY, it was cheaper to like get 500 on black vinyl, and then you do all like the Xeroxing yourself, you know?
Yep.
Like you couldn't do that with CDs, you know?
And I remember, you remember, I'm sure you do, the band Hard Time. That's how I heard them, was on a 7-inch for the first time.
Yeah.
On
so
some
cool, right?
Paper
like,
fucking copied piece of shit, you know? And it had the best music on it, you know?
Oh, love that, right? Like times have changed. Like everything, like I said, is so slick and like produced, and that's a good thing. It's not a problem. You know? So don't get me wrong, but you know, like there's a nostalgic part of me that kind of likes like the imperfections of punk and hardcore of like recordings now are so beautiful, and they used to be like they were very, you know, like to go to a studio like Mars, you had to like come up with some like cash, and you needed to be ready to play because if you messed around, that dude would kick you out.
Oh,
you know,
definitely.
So
it's not. Yeah, you couldn't make it on in the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And we were in that weird time pre-YouTube, you know, like maybe like MySpace was just starting at the end of the band. But like, and I think we were kind of victim of that like weird time period, like why our music wasn't preserved. And, you know, it doesn't help that Fight Fire with Fire Records didn't continue really that long past our second full-length. Right. Like, so everything just kind of went out of print. And nothing was, you know, because YouTube wasn't a thing. You can't find anything about us on YouTube, right?
Right.
It really,
so it's
and
just
a
like
lot
one
of
of
the
those
internet
weird
you
times.
can't. Like if you search Coalition Detroit Hardcore, you pretty much get like a bandcamp link, and then if your Instagram,
and that's recent, right? I just started that, like so.
And the Instagrams, like you can go into like some of the followers and find out like we'll tag Coalition Instagram, your Instagram, etc. in the episode description so people see it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's kind of like
really cool.
The mission statement of our podcast is to bring light to like kick-ass bands and artists that get overlooked, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
that's awesome. It's really cool what you guys are doing. I do appreciate it, and it's just fun, you know, like at the end of the day, like we're all just enjoying this, and it's so good to go down memory lane. I honestly haven't spoken in depth about the band in a long time. You know, I've kept in touch with like Brent and but through this Instagram, this is like kind of really connected me to the rest of the band. Like Alex, he's still local. He plays in a very influential doom metal band called Temple of Void. I'm sure you guys
Yep.
right? So
We know. And
yeah,
Hellmouth.
And Hellmouth, yeah.
Stuart's in Atlanta, and I haven't talked to him in years, but now we're like, he's sending me pictures through Instagram, and he's really enthused about like kind of seeing some pictures that have been dug up and things like that. And Zaz played drums for us in the middle. I've been in touch with him. I think and Josh, who was our last drummer, he still lives in the area, and he and I worked on a project together a few years ago. So like we still are in touch. So, but this has kind of connected us all back together, I just decided like it's time for the opportunity to hear Coalition to be at least available. I'm not going to force it down people's throat. I can't, and I wouldn't even if I had the influence to, but here it is, if you're into it, like for me, like getting into hardcore, and even being in Coalition, I feel like so much of my energy and excitement was in excavating older hardcore, right? Like we had the
like
internet,
digging into
but
music and reading the fucking like who thanked who and catching the bands like that and this guitar player's in that one, that drummer and this one, blah 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 type thing.
Yeah, thanks lists, right?
Yep.
Seeing the shirts that other bands are wearing in their live pictures, finding out that
That's so funny.
So-and-so's record, like,
That's
like
the
you
best
can't,
way
you
to
can't
find
get it on
bands.
I
CD
know.
or cassette. It's only on vinyl and it's been out of print for 15 years. Where can I get a bootleg?
Yeah,
or
right.
at least a dub, right? Like that was the fun, like was the hunt. And I'm not sure that the current generation like has it for me, it wasn't an issue. It was a fun challenge, right? It was almost like what's the word? Like a scavenger hunt of hardcore. Now things are kind of like laid out, but if it's not just laid out on the internet and easy to search, you're probably less likely, the current generation is less likely to actually go with tools and dig, So I'm like, okay, so nobody's digging for us, but I'm going to put this out there. And if anybody does do a little digging, they'll find out what was going on in Detroit hardcore, between 2000 and 2004, at least a band that wasn't like typical Detroit hardcore, right? Like we were doing something fast in late 80s. We were very traditional in our approach, and that's not a typical Detroit way of doing things. But I read a review where the author of the review said there was parts that reminded him of Earth Mover, and to that I say amen. That's awesome, right? Like so we're very much a product of our habitat here in Detroit, but we were also like just like super fans of like what was going on in on the coasts in the late 80s when it comes to like straight edge hardcore or straight edge adjacent hardcore. So
it made for a unique blend that made you guys kind of stand out from the pack too.
Yeah, I think so. I think we were doing something just just tweaked a little different. Like we had all these different loves and influences which kind of made who Coalition was, but one thing was we always wanted to keep it fast and fun. Although I would say the last LP it was still predominantly, had a good amount of fast parts, but you could kind of hear like that Alex was getting kind of a thirst for like that more metallic type of sound, which would lead to Hellmouth, which would
Hellmouth
lead to
was,
and then
Jeremy and I
Temple
were
of Void,
just
right? Like
talking
I
about
kind
that.
of like hear him, like the songs he wrote, and even Brent, who was in Temple of Void, like kind of it makes sense. In a way. It's almost like an embryo of like what would become, that big doom band on Relapse today.
Yeah, no, it's cool to see like where he kind of started in bands and then moved up to, and the progression of the music too. Because I love Hellmouth, Temple of Void, etc. And I remember I didn't know Alex was in Temple of Void when I first found it. I just stumbled across him, and then I bought the first record. And I remember reading inside of it, and I was like, this name seems familiar. And I was like thinking, and then I pulled out a Hellmouth album, and I was like, fuck, that's the same guy. And,
same guy.
Yeah, so that was cool. So I went back and bought the other two records that were out at the time, and then I've got Summoning the Slayer, I think was the most recent one.
Yes. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm not a metal guy, but like when I listen to that, I hear Alex's hardcore like riffing. Like I hear like, oh, that I know I remember him doing something like that on the last Coalition album, or something, something, similar to it. So I get a kick out of like hearing his discography, past Coalition, because it's him, and I know him and his music so well because we spent, plus 4 years together just grinding it out, playing hardcore shows and touring and making records. So it's really cool, that he's able to build quite the discography and career.
Yeah.
He's a hard worker and he's a smart guy, so I'm not surprised at all.
That's another thing I really I love about hardcore is that no matter what genre your former bandmates go in, you're like always supportive, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's just
for sure
kind of unique to that. It's like, fuck that motherfucker, I'm out, you know what I mean, or whatever. Like,
yeah,
like
yeah,
what we talked
totally.
about with
Like I mean,
Upstate.
Illmatic was
Yeah.
great. Like I listened to your Illmatic interview, and that was really cool. Like hearing about the hip hop influence and just like, man, that's hardcore to me. Like, is just like being able to draw from so many different resources and channel it into like an attitude, right? Like there is a musical sound, but I think the attitude of it creates the music in a sense. And, taking all these different influences and cultural movements and, the best of different artistic vibes and kind of making them aggressive, like that to me in general kind of sums up hardcore. And it's awesome. I mean, hardcore people, hardcore band members and zine makers, going back to the 80s, have ended up doing such big things, in their life, whether it's bands that got signed to major labels or producing like major label record, things like that. It's just incredible. Like the family tree, that hardcore has produced.
Definitely.
Outside of hardcore.
Definitely.
I don't think it's on accident. I think there's particular types of minds that are like, and hearts that are drawn to hardcore, and there's an ambition that kind of flourishes,
it's
when
like
you kind of grow up in that environment.
And nobody can ever grow up in it again. And that's the sad thing for me.
Yeah.
Is like,
good point.
Just, okay, even after COVID, or like how I see my kid, most of his social interaction is like over the web.
Yeah.
And it's like back in those days, in the 90s, 2000s, whatever. I mean, we found each other at these shows in different places, or met like different guys like you. And then here 20 years later, we're hitting you up like, hey man, what's up? And it's just it's awesome, that
it
exists.
really is.
But at the same time, sad that it's kind of where it stops too,
Yeah, right. You have like I talked about that time, like where you have very little responsibility compared to when you're, let's say, a husband and a father, right? Like you have that time, and it's just like those are very formative years, like you got to don't take them for granted, live them to the fullest. But life after that is good. It's just different. It's just I like these conversations as a result of those years, and it's pretty awesome.
Definitely. So what are some of the other projects that you've been working on as of late besides the one you mentioned earlier?
Actually, the one he mentioned earlier didn't get recorded, so go ahead and mention it again.
Okay. I don't remember. Did we talk about it anyway?
I think that was when we were bullshitting before we started. So whatever you said you were working on like a post-punk project.
That you
Sure, yeah. So from
Buried
late 2019 to last week, I was singing for a band called Buried Lights.
Okay,
I would describe Buried Lights as a Discord-ish post-hardcore type of band that was heavily influenced by bands like Jawbox, Soulside perhaps, and Dag Nasty for sure. I wouldn't say we sounded like Dag Nasty, but I would say that you can hear that influence in the music. That's cool. And the members of the band, at least the guitar players in particular, they were part of like early and mid 90s Detroit hardcore on pretty significant bands of the time. So I'll just mention the names, and you may have heard of them, but Paul plays guitar in Buried Lights, and he also played guitar for Transcend, and they were one of the first Doghouse Records bands. I believe that the founder of Doghouse Records was actually in that band. So Transcend, they have, their stuff streaming on Spotify. Mike is the other guitar player. He was in a local emotional hardcore band. And I say emotional hardcore to distinguish it from emo, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah, no, I get
like
it.
these are like Midwest,
Like
emotional hardcore
Unbroken
band.
and shit.
Yeah, but maybe
Like
even a little bit
Most
more
Precious
melodic
Blood
than
was
that. Like,
emotional too. Like, I mean, it's angry as fuck, but it was
sure,
emotional.
sure.
Right.
But yeah, but emotional, like, the lyrics. And this band was melodic. So Mike played guitar in Empathy. And Empathy were on Conquer the World Records. And Empathy had a posthumous 12-inch EP release called I Need, and I grew up with that. Wedge, who I mentioned earlier
Yep.
from For Our Life's Sake, he and I went to high school together, and he actually introduced me to Empathy while we were in high school, and I still listen to it to this day. So it was an honor to be in a band with Mike. He's really, quite the player, and he's just got a great artistic mind about him. So yeah, that band was Buried Lights. I say was just because I'm not in the band anymore, but I believe they're going to continue. They're really talented musicians. Like, they really know how to write a song. They really like put all their heart and thought and detail into it. And Buried Lights has a couple releases out with me on vocals if you want to check them out on Bandcamp. The first one is just a 5-song EP that we recorded. It was self-recorded in the basement, Paul's basement. Those kind of like represent like our early era of kind of trying to find our sound. And then we recorded 3 songs last year, and it's a 3-song EP called Modern Ruins. And that one kind of more captures like where, what we would be. And the recording is at Temper Mill, and we worked with a guy named Eric there who was really good at like producing and kind of helping us, to kind of get that sound we wanted. But yeah, feel free to check them out. Again, like, I'm not currently singing in
According to the internet, you are. You better have that updated, buddy.
So
Anyway.
it's all fresh, and it's just, like, sometimes you just have different creative like impulses, and those guys are great. And so, like, it was a really fun time, and it kind of got me back into contributing to hardcore and punk as a member of a band, right? And so now that I've been back, it's a lot easier for me to like look for that next project,
Right.
So who knows? I don't have anything scheduled. I'm not in a band currently, but I wouldn't rule it out as being something in the future. So
I
yeah,
want
besides
a
that,
20th
I'm just like, my other
anniversary
project is
coalition
just getting
tour.
this Instagram. What was up?
I want a 20th anniversary coalition tour.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I got to be honest, I highly doubt if Coalition will ever reform and
Wishful
play
thinking.
a show again. I think there's a better chance of maybe a 12-inch, of Breaking Point and the Sight and the Sound coming out. But it would be super fun. I would be with you. That'd be cool. If we did, I would want to play Alpena, because that was a special place to us. We all have special memories. We played there 3 times.
Yep.
Each time was at a different venue, and each time was completely different than the last one. I think we played in a barn the second time, and it was insane. Like, it was people moshing wall to wall in a barn.
Yep.
Like, crazy. It was cold, but it was awesome.
When we had Hate Inc. play,
nice.
They came up to they played at the barn.
They did. That's so good.
And,
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was probably like, that was my favorite because it was my friend's house. And there's like horses next door, and we get to do all kinds of dumb shit. But yeah, he showed up wearing like a spur on his boot and like all these spikes on, and it was like he was so out of place. And then like 10 minutes go by, and everything's like cool, because he kind of looked around like, where the fuck am I? And it's like BFE, you know what I mean?
It is.
And because he showed up
really
late, it was funny.
Awesome. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's definitely probably my favorite place.
that was cool. I still remember just being amazed, like looking like the background of a barn, people moshing in a barn, and I think it might have been October. I remember it was fall. It was one of the fall months, and there was little space heaters, I think just the energy kept us warm that night.
Oh yeah, dude.
It was awesome.
You get all sweaty.
Cool.
Oh yeah. We had a lot of good times there, man.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool to know Hate Inc. played up there too. I did not know that.
Yeah,
that must have been a sight to see.
And it was like, I believe it was right before Mr. Jeff Gunnels like got a little trouble with the law, so he was played up here too, which was like,
cool.
which was cool to us because we're like huge ass Cold as Life fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of
phenomenal.
cool. Like he played in the fucking barn. You know what I mean?
I know, it's
Like,
amazing,
it's
right?
funny. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's way cooler than Coalition. That's
No,
awesome,
man. No, not at all.
No, but that's pretty memorable.
And
I'm so happy that you were able to have that crew come up and play for you. That's a big deal.
yeah, and of course,
But we
the
were
other
treated
guys.
so well in Alpena. Like even the last time we came up, we knew we were going to get good support by that time, right? Because we had such good shows the first two that we rented a van because we knew it was going to be worth it, and we drove up, loaded our stuff in a van. I remember going to like Enterprise in the morning, picking it up, and then we came and we played some outdoor venue. It was our last time there in 04, I believe. Maybe spring. I don't remember exactly when. I feel like it was before the Sight and the Sound drop, but probably like around the time we recorded it. But yeah, we played like an outdoor venue that was covered. It was like had a stage and it had a cover, but it was open air. I don't know if either of you guys were at that
Hubbard
one.
Lake's fucking. I think what they call it. It's just like a music fest that they do every year, I think.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, we played there.
But it was at a concrete, and there was picnic tables. Yep. Oh, okay.
That's it.
I know. I remember. I got a couple pictures from that show.
I have pictures of our drive up to Alpena that day, and maybe some on the way back.
Right.
Because I think my hair looks sweaty on the way back. So it must have been, or on some of the pictures, I must have been the way back home after we played, because I always worked up quite a sweat.
Oh yeah, man.
Just going
every
every
time you guys played, man, it was 120% for sure.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing like about the band that like I'm always proud about is like it didn't matter if we were playing like to a lot of people or a basement with like 5 people. Like we were go for it every time, and we were gonna play like it was for, I don't know, for our lives.
Yeah.
That's one thing we always agreed on. Like it doesn't matter how many people, because just one person paid to see you, you give them your best. So yeah, we tried to bring it as much as we could every single night.
Shit, you did.
So,
I'm glad that we our little scene could help you out back then, man.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure you were
honestly,
shocked though that there was like actually a few kids,
Yeah, like the first time we came up, we played. It was like a rec center, because I remember the smell of chlorine.
Yep. That's the show that I got tattooed at and bought the record
that was
from.
this show. Okay, so I was surprised. That place was packed from what I remember, and I like. So for us, like at that time, we didn't have a full length out or anything like that. I think we had our 7-inch that our friend Ian put out. He put out a 3-song 7-inch. But I remember signing autographs. Like people wanted us to sign the cover of the record, and that was really an honor and really special. And I felt weird doing it. Like, are you sure?
Right, because of that.
But like
age
we were
gap,
treated
dude.
we were treated with a lot of respect and love, and that's why we wanted to come back, and that's why we came back for the barn show, and then for the the Hubbard's Lake show. Like we were gonna make the drive because we felt loved, when we came up and taken care of. So we didn't even feel like that in Detroit.
Well, it's so cliquey,
Yeah, and that's okay. It's not. I guess the song "Goodnight Detroit" is kind of about that. To be honest with you, like "Goodnight Detroit," like we gave it our all. We gave it our everything. That's the chorus. I gave it my all. I gave you my all. I gave you my everything. Like we did, and it just wasn't reciprocated, and that's okay, because we'd go to Saginaw, or we go to Alpena, and we were treated well, and then we'd go to the coast, like if it was the West Coast or East Coast, there'd be people singing along, but in Detroit, nobody would sing along. Like it was just kind of weird not to like to play your hearts out, like in Detroit, Ypsilanti, wherever it was in the Detroit area. And like we just worked really hard and we're just doing the best we could. And it just wasn't the style of hardcore for the area, and I get that. Like there's no hard feelings, but there was a little bit of like a hurt. I wouldn't say an anger, but like I said, listen to "Goodnight Detroit," the song on the Sight and the Sound, and it kind of expresses, like there's a little bit of anger in that song,
more frustration.
Maybe it's more fabricated, a little bit of frustration, but it was more hurt than anything. It's more like, hey, like we're trying really hard, and we've been doing this for like a few years now. It's like I wish, it's more like I wish people would pay attention to us in our own city. Like here, look at what we're trying to do. And it wasn't about us. It was about trying to build a fast hardcore scene in Detroit. Now the
Well,
good thing is later on you'd see some bands kind of pop up. Like I was in a band simultaneously with Coalition, and I don't know if you guys knew that, called Jailbreak.
yep, I knew
And I
that.
I think and Jailbreak became Razzle Dazzle.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
That
so
I
like
did not
it
know.
was Will, Haroon, and myself were Jailbreak, and then we played with Desperate Measures again. They popped up at Idle Kids in 2000, like April 2004. That was our last show, and those two guys were like a Coalition was like my number one band, and they were brilliant. Will and Haroon are brilliant guys. They were a little bit younger.
Was that Will
They
Swan?
Will Atkin, or otherwise known as Ill Will, and Haroon Khan.
Oh,
Haroon
okay.
plays in Cold World
I
today.
saw
He's
one of
still
the covers was Ill Will, one of your funny
Yes,
covers,
yeah,
because I just saw
He
that
was our
this
roadie
morning, and
for
I'm
one
like,
of
who the hell
our
is
biggest
Ill
tour
Will?
in 2003. Yeah,
Okay,
Ill Will. So Ill Will
gotcha.
is the singer of Razzle Dazzle.
Okay,
Okay, so they were
gotcha.
on Locking Out Records, and
Yeah.
and they made quite a name for themselves. They were a really fun, like Murphy's Law sort of like hardcore band, but they had a lot of fast songs, so they were like I'd call them a fast hardcore band. And then Ian Courtney was in a band called Hawkeye, and they put out a demo, and it was really good, and it was fast hardcore. And then bands like Face Reality and Freedom, and now you have Never Ending Game, who are just like national. They're not
Yeah,
even
yeah.
just like
They're pretty
Michigan. Like
big.
they're like a national band, and they have a new LP dropping. So I'd like to think we were like part of that like lineage of like fast hardcore, because there really wasn't anything. There was Varsity, and then there really wasn't anything besides Varsity, and Varsity was pretty short lived. And by the way, they recorded an LP that was never released. It was supposed to be on Underestimated Records. It's called Can't Escape the Truth, and it's streaming on Bandcamp. And Alex, who was the guitar player, has no idea who put that up, but who
Really?
cares? It's out there, and it's a really good listen. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
if anybody's interested in hearing some like
Oh yeah, I just
kind of
wrote that
positive
down.
youth crew that was never released, and it's really good quality stuff, it's look up Varsity Can't Escape the Truth on
Oh,
Spotify and
fucking
give it a
totally
listen.
doing
It's
it.
really fun.
I seen one of you guys post that on Instagram, and you were like, "How the fuck did that get up there?"
Yeah, Alex. Yeah, Alex. I was like, you didn't. I side chatted him like, you didn't do that. He's like, no. He's like, somebody's making very little money off of streaming that. So like he was kind of making fun of it. Like, but it's funny because the picture, if you look at the picture, it says Varsity. It's actually a Coalition picture. I can see the back of my head. It's a picture taken from our Smorgasbord EP. So I don't know who put it up,
Oh, and then just
but
superimposed Varsity over it.
yeah, exactly. So that's
Great.
actually me, Brent, and Alex
It's
in that
hilarious.
picture. Yeah,
Hear
so
the truth
it's a really
here
good
first.
LP.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
man.
so
So
that's another one I would love to see get released on vinyl, but like it's like one of those things. It'll probably just be in the streaming world, which is okay. At least it's available.
yeah, I do know some people that do have connections for small vinyl runs. So if you ever need a hand in that, feel free to get a hold of me.
Oh, sweet, nice. Like a couple hundred.
Yeah. And I know
Yeah,
there are some locally in Detroit, but then I know there's other places outsourced. Like I have friends that run labels and whatnot and have done smaller runs. So if I can do anything to help, I'd be happy to.
I will hit you up. Like I'm kind of still talking to someone about possibly releasing the vinyl, but like I said, it's not like it's not in stone. So if anything like falls off the table for that, then I'm definitely going to pursue other options. So yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
it might surprise you. I
Thanks.
mean, there might be more people out there than you think that are wanting to have that. Because I know.
That would be amazing.
I think that what you just said about like you weren't felt as loved in Detroit. Now, from the outside of that to me is what made you stand out. Was that there was nobody that sounds like that in Michigan. I mean, you had
Yeah,
like
it's true.
the Alliance, before that Hyde, Earth Mover, Walls. You know what like they were all like super, heavier bands,
Tough.
Tough
Right.
Guy.
Yeah. Like even like Brent's like side project, It's All Gone to Hell. Like
Oh yeah, I fucking love
that's
that
really
album.
good. That's really good stuff. But it was different. It was definitely more in the Detroit lineage
Yeah,
of like
definitely.
hardcore, going back to the 90s. Like, yeah, we were kind of disconnected from that in a sense, and we wanted to be, because we were youth crew kids, just to say, I don't know how else to say it. We were like
No,
youth
yeah,
crew
I gotcha.
kids. That was our main love, but we still supported and loved the moshy stuff. Like, I remember seeing Hatebreed, like Satisfaction just came out and they played at the shelter opening for Bloodlight. There was 50 people there and every single person sang along.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
dope.
phenomenal. So like, I love that stuff. My true love was like Youth of Today and Bold and things like that. Like, I still remember finding a Bold Speak Out cassette at a local record store, and I put that on in my car at the time, and I knew, I was like, this is me. Like, if there's a music that could express who I am, it was Bold Speak Out. I love all the other stuff and I support it, but this is me. And I found a couple kids who kind of had similar feelings,
Uh-huh.
and that was what Coalition was. Like, but we couldn't get the Detroit out of our blood, and we didn't want to. But we were like youth through kids that were from Detroit, so here we are, like kind of mixing Earth Mover and Bold. Let's
Yeah,
say, for
definitely.
lack of a better word.
Definitely. So, like I said, 20 years on, and what Ryan just mentioned, I think you'd be surprised as to how many people are, want to hear Coalition.
I think
Varsity.
even Cold as Life, they were surprised at how many people bought up the most recent represses that they did. Like, I don't know exactly the quantities. I know they did like 313 of one of them.
It was
and then
pretty
like
limited.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, wow. That sounds like, to me, like, I'm like, wow, that sounds like a low quantity.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, that's good. I'm glad they were pleasantly surprised with like the respect that of people buying their record.
They went out.
Wow,
was
I
a
didn't realize
pre-order
it was
at
such a
certain
short
time,
run.
right?
Yeah, they went up as pre-orders and then came out down the road. It was A389 Records that did the represses.
You familiar with those?
Is it the new Ron press, or are you talking about like Born to Land Hard?
They did Born to Land Hard first, and then they did the demos and stuff with Ron recently.
Yep. That one's the recent one, right?
Yeah, like
Is Declination? Have you heard of Declination coming out like on vinyl?
Yeah. I've heard rumor. I haven't seen it confirmed yet, though. I have an old CD
that's that
still.
elusive record. Like, I'd love to have a new, fresh copy of that one.
Yeah. I have an old CD copy of it still, but to get the record would be sweet. Same with the demos. I had a CD copy of that as well, but I think they did a little remastering on the record when it came out and cleaned some stuff up, and it sounds, I think, better than the CD.
Nice. Yeah, the new demos sound awesome.
Yeah. And those demo versions of some of those songs are some of my favorite versions of the songs too.
Oh, I love it. I like, when I was first getting into hardcore, like, those were so hard to get. Those Ron demos, or even like the Jeff singing demos, like later on, those they were not easily available. I remember having like dubs of those, and still like thinking they were so awesome.
Yeah.
Like, how much longer? I could just listen to that song on repeat. Like, that song.
Yeah.
It makes me sad, but it also makes me want to fight. Like, all at once.
Yep.
I'm a hardcore homeboy kind of guy. I can listen to that song over and over. Makes me think of my little brother. However you want to take that.
Yeah.
So I have a question going back to basement shows. You guys have played like quite a few basement shows, and I think you kind of already answered this a little bit. But do you think that the smaller shows that you guys did, you were better received than playing at like a venue or something? And were they a little more personal to you, or a better experience? Or
I would say playing. Let me start by saying this. Leading up to a show in a basement, I don't think I don't think I had the same like initial excitement of maybe playing a show like at the shelter. Okay.
Right,
so like leading up to it, it's more chill. Like, it's not that you just don't think much of it. You're like, hey, we're going to go play in a basement. It's kind of like practice, right?
Yeah, you don't feel as pressured.
Playing at the shelter feels a little more official. So you're like a little, little butterflies. You're taking it a little bit differently.
Oh yeah.
Like leading up. But when you actually play, like when it comes to like, let's say particular like reception, it's hard to say. In a basement, things are small and typically pretty dark. So that can give you the illusion of like intensity, even if nobody's even paying attention, right? So I always enjoyed playing shows in basements because it only takes a handful of people to make it feel full. And when it feels full, there's like an undescribable energy that's kind of passed back and forth between, let's say, the band and the people that are there. And you feel a little bit more free to be yourself because you're not on a stage, right?
Yeah,
You're
and you're
not
more comfortable.
out front. You're not like on a pedestal in a way, you know, like you're on the floor, you're all equals, you're one of them, right?
Yeah.
And it feels different. It feels really good. So I would say playing in basements sometimes were surprisingly the best shows where like things just click and emotionally you feel it just felt right. Playing at places like St. Andrews of the Shelter feel epic and it feels really important, you know, but you also feel like you kind of feel far away. You kind of feel distant. You kind of feel like there's the opportunity for judgment, you know, like you're not together on this. You're separated by this wall and stage. Shelter, not so much, but like, you know what I mean? Like you're a little bit higher up. You feel a little bit like,
Yeah, you're looking over a
between you and the
crowd and
people.
stuff versus being face to face in a basement.
Yeah. So like, and because we weren't the type of band in Detroit to have people like piling on and singing along at every show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like playing locally in a basement always felt the best. So I'm glad you brought up that question because that's actually very interesting for me to kind of like revisit the difference of, you know, the different feeling of playing in a basement or in like a strange venue, like something that you wouldn't expect to be a venue at all compared to like this known place where like AFI played last week and Good Riddance is playing the next week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, for us, I would say that playing in a basement, you don't have that like Super Bowl week excitement leading up to it, but it feels so right and it feels so good and you feel like you can be yourself more than playing those like epic venues, and epic figuratively speaking for like hardcore purposes,
terms,
you know? Yeah.
No, I hear you.
So I think like locally, like basements were like our place. And I've heard some people like just through Instagram and stuff like that in the last month talk about, I saw you guys in a basement, you know, and that was the best. And I'm like, yeah, like that was the best. Like I have some good memories of playing in basements here, Philadelphia, wherever it's the case. Like I remember playing in Baltimore in a basement and I was kind of bummed. I was like, man, we're on tour in Baltimore, we're playing in a basement, but it was awesome. Because the next time we played Baltimore, we played this big venue and nobody was there, and it was really awkward, you know. Like, so it was cool.
Crowd.
I think you
so
guys
I say basement.
your first show that you booked was in a basement, if I read that correctly. Yeah.
Yes.
And you didn't yet have the band name Coalition when the flyer was made up. You guys were just listed as like number 5, or maybe it was number 4, but. Did you have the band name by the time the show happened, or did you get it afterwards?
There is an alternate version of the flyer that has the name Coalition on it.
Okay.
So I don't remember exactly how close to the show. Yeah, but like everything moved so quick. Like I said, we clicked. We had that first practice. We had 2 songs and we were moving along. We felt good. We were ready to take on the world, you know, sort of feeling. So that show was, in a basement, and I don't remember a lot about it. I remember the band Capture the Flag played, and I really liked them.
Yeah, I remember that.
They were sort of like a emo pop punk, you know, inspired band, and they had fast parts, which again, I know I said I love fast music. So the fact that they had melody and fast parts, oh man, I love that. And I love the singer's voice. Right? He had like a melodic voice, but it was kind of like manly at the same time in a good way. Like it was really cool. So anyways, I love to Capture the Flag. But yeah, so we were playing around with names and we had 3 finalists. The finalists were Coalition, obviously. The second was Change. We wanted like something really simple. Actually, we had 4. It was Coalition, Change. The third one was Expression, not with an X, but EX, like the upfront song. And the fourth one was Transfer. So the funny thing is, obviously Change is one of my favorite current bands, so that's cool that name's out there, you know, like now. But that was a name that we considered. And Transfer became a local emo band called The Transfer at the time of Coalition, who were awesome. I really loved them. They were like a mid-tempo, melodic, emo, you know, kind of poppy punk band, and we played with them often. We even talked about doing a split with them. They were really good. their first drummer was actually the drummer of Varsity, so that was kind of how we were connected.
Okay.
And he said, "Hey, can we use the name Transfer for our band?" Or the Transfer. I was like, "Yeah, go for it," because he had heard through Alex or something that like that was a name that I'd come up with for a possibility that could have been Coalition's alternate name or something. So
That would have
yeah,
been
so
my
we didn't have a
second
name,
pick.
and
Transfer.
we were booked.
That's cool, man.
But it gave us a goal, and we got it. And I like Coalition. I still do to this day. It's simple.
Oh yeah, it's
Little
simple.
did I
It
know
tells
there
you
was a
what's
band in
up.
Poland. There was a band in Poland at the same time that was using that name, and they're kind of like a punk hardcore band. I think they're on Spotify too. But they were in Poland, so it didn't really matter, But we didn't know that at the time. Obviously, I didn't know that until recently.
I found another One Life crew that's like a hip hop group. It's just so weird, dude.
Oh
like,
wow!
When I had,
That's
if I have it
interesting.
mixed in, like it was all mixed in my media on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, they didn't even write this many songs, and it's playing through, and then it's like, this is not One Life crew, and then of course I got to the bottom of it.
I've had that happen before
So
too.
weird.
Actually,
Yeah.
I was searching for the Co-Defendants project that just came out. I was searching for records for the store for that, and there's a hip hop group named the Co-Defendants. And so I was like, oh, this ain't the
Makes
same
things
fucking
difficult.
band.
And it's funny you say that because there's a hip hop band called Coalition. That's Spotify too.
Yeah,
So there you go.
Yep.
There's always a hip hop equivalent somewhere. It makes it fun.
It's hard to land on a band name with so much stuff out there. Like we just interviewed a band by the name of Majesties, and then their other band named is Obseque, which is like a Latin word. But we got into details about their name and stuff, and they were kind of like, yeah, we had to search the corners of the internet to make sure nobody took Majesties and blah blah blah. Like, in this day and age, like it's hard to find something that hasn't been taken yet.
Yeah, that's what, like, there's I think there's a metallic, maybe metalcore, I'm not sure what I'd call them, band called Coalition in Rochester, New York.
Shit.
Like, that's, hey, take the name, like,
It's
we don't
like,
own it.
Right.
Like Cutthroat.
Yeah,
Like
Cutthroat.
There's like 5 of those.
Yeah.
We were talking about that on the Upstate thing.
Yeah, I had that.
Sometimes
all
those
backwards.
simple names, like, it's just, they're great, but obviously you're not going to be the only one to think about them,
Right.
to think of them, or to think they're sweet.
And then usually when you do find something that nobody else thought of, people are like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's true. Yeah, it is. It's definitely getting harder, right? As time goes by and there's more bands, there's more names that have been used. So soon we're gonna just have to use like automatic like name generators.
Yeah, Chat GPT.
Yeah.
So
Whoa.
I want to ask, what are some of your favorite memories of just Detroit hardcore shows that weren't your own?
I would say that Hatebreed one I referenced earlier.
Yeah.
The first time, I don't know if it was the first time they came to Detroit, to be honest. I think they may have they put out that 7-inch on Smorgasbord. I don't know if they were here before their Victory days, but I saw them open for Bloodlet, like I said, at the Shelter, and they played pretty early, so there wasn't a lot of people there, but it was just like every song, every single person who was there knew every word. Like, I've never seen anything like that except for Bane, maybe.
Right.
Like, Bane shows, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Bane. Bane shows are like,
yeah,
like
dude.
crazy.
My wife and
Bane's
I
awesome.
have seen Bane twice, and we took our kid to the second time.
And are there like more recent shows? Like, I haven't seen Bane in a long time. I'm assuming it's still the same.
It
like,
was.
people,
They're
special.
How many years, dude? I get like this whole 20-year thing.
Stopping. Well, that, and there's a lot of bands that were like, this is our last
10 years
tour,
ago.
and then they do another tour,
Yeah.
and then, And
So my wife and I saw Bane in Lansing on their last tour. But then they did another last tour the following like year or whatever. And then we took our son, and he was like 5. He's 50, so that's like 10 years ago.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
But I have
That's
seen
pretty
that
cool.
they've kind of been recently playing again. And I also saw that One King Down is out playing again. It's just crazy.
Pretty cool.
Bane wasn't.
That's pretty cool.
They're not on Tied Down Fest this year, are they?
No.
I keep forgetting the lineup for the whole thing.
Trapped Under Ice, Gorilla Biscuits. Are you going to try to check that out, Tie Down Fest?
I would love to go. Yes.
I believe
Yeah.
Jason and I are going for sure. Ogre Zilkowski.
So it's amazing what those Edgemen guys have been able to put together the last few years.
I never
Even the
thought I'd
shows
see
that they're
Gorilla
having at the
Biscuits.
shop. I'm sure you guys, if you haven't been yet, you've probably seen some videos like Drain last November.
Oh,
Like,
Drain's the shit.
dude, it was insane. Like I've never seen it. Okay, so like it's different now. Like it's bigger. I feel like hardcore is like has grown in Detroit. I kind of had like a blackout era where like I got married, had kids, and like I'm kind of coming back. And it's like some of
Right.
these shows, it could be a Thursday night at Edgeman, and the place is like filled with
No
hundreds
shit.
of kids, and there's
Yeah.
like energy galore. So, and then one step closer was with Soulblind in January, and it was packed again on a Thursday night, and it was awesome. So yeah,
That
Detroit
is
hardcore
awesome.
is pretty. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I mean, you still have like the shows where like you might have 25 or 30 people show up, but like there is some great opportunity, for big shows here, and Edgemen are like at the front, kind of like leading, like giving the opportunities for not just the hardcore community, but for bands who are traveling and local to have a venue to play where they're going to get paid decent, because they're opening up their own storehouse, to them to play.
And that's
And
what
it's
breeds a great
been a great
scene, man,
thing.
a great venue. I mean, you gotta
Yeah,
have it.
for sure. I think it's just like the beginning of like, good things. Like we've already seen some great things, but I think it's going to keep getting
I
better,
really
and
hope so, man.
Tied down's not going anywhere, like,
Yeah.
the numbers are staggering
Like
for
like
how
I
many
said,
pre-sales.
I never thought I'd ever have the opportunity to even see Gorilla Biscuits. I thought that was like
Sure.
I'd just see it in pictures and read about it in books. You know what I'm saying? And then
Yep.
they're
It's
playing
real.
Detroit in 2023. What the fuck is going on?
Crazy, right?
Well, think of how many bands over the pandemic either
Yeah.
formed or like kind of got back in touch with each other and started playing
Yeah.
again, and I think that attributed to the growing scene as well,
I am sure.
because people were more hungry to get out there and start playing shit.
Yeah, that's for sure. So it's exciting. It's definitely thriving, and there's so many different like types of hardcore right now, that there's something for everyone, like I love it all, but if you don't, you're going to find something you love at your average show at Edgeman. You're going to have
That's
different
great
types
that
of
there's that
hardcore
variety
that are
again.
awesome. Yeah,
You know,
for sure. I
and
mean, like
that's
Soulblind
how it
touring
was
with
up
One
here.
Step Closer, like that. Like Soulblind's not quite a hardcore band, but like I'd say they're hardcore adjacent. They got some heaviness and groove and stuff like that. And obviously, like they tour with One Step Closer,
It
so
sound like they have the attitude to
connected.
and
Yeah,
the morals of a hardcore band anyway.
right. So it's cool. It's different in a good way than it was, let's say 20 years ago. There's definitely a lot more room to include different, like I'm hearing a lot of like shoegaze types of bands that are like playing on labels that have hardcore bands also. It's really cool, like
Yeah,
all
that's interesting.
these new labels that are like kind of these they kind of have I don't know if they're younger, but they kind of have a younger feel. They're kind of doing these differently. It's really exciting to be like New Morality Zine, Sunday Drive Records, like just those two in particular, like just the diversity of genre like within their roster, man, like they're putting out some awesome stuff, like, and it's exciting. Like the formats are all like crazy. Like it could be lathe, it could be cassette, it could be
Oh, I love
a
that.
12-inch, right? Like it's just like it's
I've even
different,
seen
and
some
they're
8-tracks.
hustling. I feel like they're like
8-tracks.
hustling. I feel like that's the future. Like I feel like those two labels are good examples of like really like being flexible, and they're like really moving along. I think that's going to be like help them to reach even more, newer heights of success moving forward. But yeah, it's hardcore's pretty awesome right now. It wasn't back then, obviously. I loved it, but like it's really in a good place right now. Like the bands are so much, like they're so good. Like you can't get away with being an average band the way you could 20 years ago. Like it's there's the bar has definitely been raised,
Oh yeah, for
like on
sure.
recordings, on like songwriting, and that's for the better. It's really awesome.
Oh yeah, when I started my first band, we did a demo on a karaoke machine, dude. Like with the microphone hanging in the middle of the room. We're like,
But isn't there a part of you that
16
like loves
fucking
that like that was an option? That's awesome.
And it-
Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
so
yeah.
punk,
And then we had it on a tape, and somehow somebody converted it to CD, and it sounds like shit to this day. But But like you said, it's a
special.
memory and it's special, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's your turd to frame.
That's my turn to frame. You got it right.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask the podcast
there you go.
question here. You said you listened to a couple episodes, so you probably heard us ask somebody else this too. But Jeremy and I like to ask this to everybody just because we're fans of all different styles of music.
Sure.
What are some of the things, if there are any, that are outside of the wheelhouse of like hardcore and punk and stuff that you listen to that people wouldn't expect?
Or some guilty pleasure, like you secretly listen to Kenny G like Sunday evenings with a whatever.
Sure.
I don't know.
Motherfucker's smooth, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with one of my biggest like influences in music, and it goes back to when I was in elementary school, and I was a hockey player, and I actually won the state championship in Alpena back in '96.
Get out of here.
I remember that was a pretty special time. But anyways,
I bet your pictures.
yeah, I was in
at the
elementary
skate
school, and I had a
range.
buddy on my hockey team, and his sister was in college, and she was rocking The Cure in New Order in particular, and Pesh Mode, stuff like that.
Oh, dude,
And I
you're in our
became
wheelhouse.
obsessed with New Order Substance. And it was probably 1988 when I heard it for the first time. So this is, it came out in 87, whatever. Think about how cool this girl must have been. I loved it so much, and she gave me her cassette, her New Order Substance 87 cassette. And you could fit that double LP on one cassette. That's how cool cassettes were, right? It was a super long cassette, but I loved it. And she also got me into The Cure. And I think it was Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me was like the first Cure that I was exposed to, because it was 1988, right?
Me too.
So my first ever concert I went to, first ever live music, I somehow convinced my mom when I was in 4th grade to take me to the Palace of Auburn Hills to see The Cure's Prayers for Rain tour. I was just a regular hockey player, elementary
one hell
kid.
of a first concert.
Yeah, dude.
It was epic, right? Like in the true sense of the word. I was probably wearing like spandex shorts, and like a hockey shirt. And my mom took me, and I walked in, and I had no idea what I was getting into. Like everybody looked like Robert Smith. They had the hair, the makeup, and they were doing these like fancy arm movements that was like a type of dance. I was 9 years old. Like it was awesome, like indifferent and scary, and the sound was just booming. Even like I was sitting up like in the upper deck, but it's still like it was so big sounding. So The Cure are humongous for me. Now I have a particular era of The Cure that to this day I listen to over and over and over again, and it's a very particular time. It's 80 through 82.
That's probably
okay. So
like
those are my high years of like The Cure as an adult. As a kid, I would have said Head on the Door, Japanese Whispers, stuff like that. But now it's like 17 Seconds, Faith, Pornography.
Yep.
Yeah. The goth rock era, if you
will. The goth rock era.
Yeah.
Pornography is my favorite album of all time, and Siamese Twins is my favorite song of all time. I could listen to that song all the time. It's creepy. There's actually like a old BBC like ballet, like it's almost like a avant-garde ballet, like creepy ballet
to it,
like dance set to the live music of The Cure playing that song, and it's really creepy and awesome. So check it out on YouTube. It's awesome. I actually converted it just to like MP3 so I could just listen to it, because I think there's like live cellos. I forget. It's been a while since I've watched the video, but it's a little bit different version, but it's powerful.
That's awesome.
So I love The Cure. I obviously love New Order and stuff like that. I might not look like it. I don't dig super deep into the history. I just like kind of letting like, the songs of 17 Seconds and Faith and stuff like that. I just kind of like letting them be a mystery and letting them be haunted. I don't need to know everything. Right. Like some people are super fans where they want to know every detail. I like
the mystery,
the mystery, because that is mysterious era. Those dudes, I don't even think they know what was going on, at least during 82, right? Like they were like so high on drugs and fighting and stuff like that. But like that is some of the most magical music I've ever heard in my life. Oh. But so guilty pleasure, that's my favorite.
Okay.
Music. I would say guilty pleasure. I I'm not really embarrassed by it. I actually really like it, and I actually I'll play this stuff while my kids are brushing their teeth, and I'll like dance around all silly with them.
Yeah.
But I love 80s electro funk. So I love Nucleus. I love Planet Patrol. I love Man Parrish and Johns and Crew.
That's awesome.
I even going back even a little bit like Precursor. I love the Gap Band. Like I love this funk that has like this new electronic sensibility added into it. I could listen to it all the time. Like I was singing with my 6-year-old today, Oh Sheila today, you know, that's like I love that stuff, right? And part of it too is that music's kind of an intersection of a couple other things that I really love. I love old breakdancing videos, you know, I love watching the Breakers, you know, old videos and stuff like that, which are, you know, like Planet Patrol playing in the background. I love breakdown or breakdance like style and culture from like the early to mid 80s.
Yeah, the B-boy style.
But I also love the pure hip hop that was coming out. I love Treacherous 3, Houdini, and even going up a little bit more, I really like EMPD, you know, like stuff like that. And then even, you know, like, and by extension, I love A Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that. But yeah, so there's kind of like, you know, this electro funk kind of like is an intersection for me of like pop culture, but then like there's like the kind of like the hip hop element, you know.
Yeah, that was like the
like Nucleus is a great
early on
example of
hip hop before it was even known to be hip hop at the time.
Yeah,
I mean, they were sampling that stuff and chopping it up and putting little rhymes over it and whatnot. So that was like the gateway into all that. Like Tribe Called Quest got me into jazz.
Nice. Which completely makes sense. You're like, where are these bass lines coming from?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and we're saying bass, we're saying like real stand-up bass, you know?
Yeah, like Ron Carter and stuff like that, like walking bass lines, Paul Chambers, etc. It was perfect music for that, what they were trying to make out of it. And same with funk too, like you talked about those bands, and like Brothers Johnson would be another one with like
so good
crazy bass lines and stuff, and it just I love all that stuff myself, and along with The Cure too. So I did want to ask though, going back to The Cure, are you going to see them for their last tour that they're doing coming up?
I wish I could. I just can't afford it.
Yeah,
it's a little bit out of my ballpark, you know. But it would be the type of thing where if it was offered to me, you know,
you'd be
reasonably,
yeah.
I would be there in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're an amazing live band. I've never gotten to see them live, but I've seen and watched plenty of videos. And like I remember Bowie's concert video where he brought out Robert Smith and other people like Lou Reed and whatnot. And Robert Smith's just a phenomenal musician.
Yeah, he's a unique talent. Like I don't know what else to say. Like there's no one like him. That's The Cure. You know, like you can't you can say you're influenced by them, but nobody can rip them off. You can try as hard as you want, but you are not Robert Smith.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. That is one band that cannot be imitated.
You literally cannot imitate that band. Point. Like I could imitate Floor Punch. I can imitate that. I can't imitate, you know.
Yeah, I can do a throwdown song, you know, right now.
Yeah, right. But you can't do The Cure.
But, you know, I am not doing any Boys Don't Cry, that's for sure.
Yes.
I would
Which I do like that era too. I like the Three Imaginary Boys stuff. I like it. It's a little bit more punky, but the goth stuff, it just, man.
Now 17 Seconds is one of my it's right up there with one of my favorite albums too. And by The Cure,
the song
that would
17
be
Seconds.
Yeah. The whole album, really. I mean, it just
the whole album, but that song, the way it closes things out, so good.
It's just like that's like my rainy day record. It complements all of what raindrops sound like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, man, I don't really have anything else here for you. Jeremy, you got other questions?
We've been talking for a while.
Yeah. I just looked down at the time and didn't even realize it had been an hour and a half already.
It's been a fucking awesome chat, dude.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I really, really appreciate you guys escorting me down memory lane like this. It's been super fun and interesting, and you guys have been great hosts. I appreciate your time.
Hey man, I appreciate your time and opening up about shit that nobody in the world has any idea about until now.
Yeah. This is, you said this was your first podcast, so
Yeah, definitely.
that's awesome.
Yeah, 100%. First podcast. Yeah, so I haven't talked about this stuff with anybody for a long time, except maybe kind of DMing former
Right.
band members and stuff. So yeah, it's really really cool. That was the whole point with the Instagram account, was to just kind of share the story. And by the way, the Instagram account, I'm moving it along at lightning speed. I'm posting all the time because I know my energy is going to run out
Yeah.
eventually. So I want to hurry up and tell the story chronologically as fast as possible so that I can just kind of let it rest. And then, like, as things pop up, I can add them. But I
Gotcha.
want to get the story out there because I got the energy right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've got the desire. I'm really excited about it. That doesn't always last forever, so I'm going to get it. I'm going to keep going,
Love
breakneck
it, dude.
speed. 3 posts a day, you know, like I'm going crazy, but it's fun. I'm really enjoying it right now. So, and
Yeah, and this
and
this will help you get the
having you guys
story
invite
out
me
there
has
for
been like
sure.
a great honor to, like, kind of highlight, you know, some of the stuff that we did, and just kind of getting the music heard one more time.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not like you could write a post as long as the dialogue for this episode's been. So it's cool to get the story out there in a format that you can, you know, take with you and listen somewhere. And fans of the band, I'm sure, will be happy to hear it.
And you guys are from Alpena, which is one of the band's most special memories, is playing 3 times up there. So that's another reason why I was like, no brainer. Like, yeah,
I
this
appreciate
this
that,
is
man.
that was one of the biggest surprises in all of Coalition history, was that first show at that rec center and the excitement of all the kids. Yeah, it was awesome. So I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the barn. I'll never forget the outdoor show. It was all pleasant memories. And yeah, you guys took good care of us, so I appreciate that. So that's why I say it really is an honor to be asked to chat with you guys. Yeah,
Well, as a
great times.
as a fan and a young hardcore kid back then, your words had a very positive influence on me and got me, you know, through, you know, stupid bullshit when you're a kid or shit that you don't really, you know, you need to deal with. So thank you.
I appreciate you sharing that. Sometimes you don't know, you know, like sometimes I'm like, oh, these lyrics are stupid or timely, but you know,
No,
like
dude,
that.
I love that. You
That
think
hearing
you're
that kind
hard,
helps
you're
make it
full
all
of
worth
shit.
it, you know?
Yeah. Did you hear me? I love that line. That's an awesome opening line, dude.
That was a pretty cool song. That was a fun one to play.
Yeah, that's
Not
like
gonna
I
lie.
said, that's my favorite song.
You just unleash
Yeah, I love
on that
it.
one.
But yeah, man, it was awesome talking to you, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
For sure. Ryan, Jeremy, you guys are awesome. Appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. You enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well.
Take
Bye,
it
guys.
easy.